a conductive wire, and you were so electric. I had no say when you came so near, and just passed right through me.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is back. Today we are doing a 3-person podcast to discuss Jojo Rabbit. I am joined by Mitchell McDonald and Jonathan Lally. Guys, how are you doing?
I'm good, coming to you live from the Grove parking structure in beautiful Los Angeles, California.
Perfect.
Excellent. I am doing wonderful myself. I am coming from my teeny tiny closet-sized office in San Francisco, and I am doing just lovely. Just did a Peloton ride, and my back isn't hurting today, so I'm standing. I got myself a sit-stand desk. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know if the Peloton riding is so much the controversial part as so much their awful marketing choices. But you have to admit, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have gotten Ryan Reynolds' amazing response. So
very true.
Yeah, silver linings. But I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Trying to stay warm in the currently 24-degree weather, even though I'm sitting here in shorts because I don't know why.
Fair.
Goodness.
I'm inside at least. It's warm inside. It is not warm outside.
Oh my gosh.
You guys should come visit in the middle of winter. It'll be great.
You're welcome to come visit us in California. There's 2 of us. One
Probably more likely.
I do want to go to Denver at some point for sure, but I know that's not even close to you.
Yeah.
It's not. It's closer to my cousins. I can make it work. We'll make it work.
But yeah, that's Denver's where we'd want to be.
Oops.
Totally understandable, but why don't we go ahead and jump into Jojo Rabbit? I wanted to take a little bit of a different approach with this movie instead of just talking the usual cast and crew story sort of thing, because I think what really stands out with this movie is Taika Waititi's ability to just bring such goofy, interesting concepts to life. He did it with Thor Ragnarok, which I think is safe to say probably all 3 of our favorites as far as the Thor movies go.
Yes, absolutely. That is a
Thor movies, definitely. Yeah, no question.
And it might even be
upper
echelon of Marvel movies in general. It's pretty
agreed.
Yeah, I would agree with. It's definitely up there. It's definitely one of the most fun ones.
Yeah, and you both were on my case to go see Jojo Rabbit, and I was like, guys, I live in the middle of nowhere. I gotta wait.
My God.
Longer than you guys do. But
I definitely hit you up quite a few times, and I was so excited because you're finally. How far are you from the Alamo Draft House, though? Like, there is one in Colorado.
There is one up by my cousin's, but it's like now an hour and a half away. At least.
Is that where you ended up seeing it?
No, I waited until it was at the theater down in Colorado Springs. The only thing I have seen at the Alamo Draft House was when I went to go see El Camino.
Ah, yeah.
So I have at least been to the Alamo, but, Jonathan, I know we were texting back and forth, and I was like, it'll be here eventually, and then I'll go see it, because it's one of those things where here I get worried that movies will only be in theater for like a week or 2, and that it's going to snow the whole time and I won't get to go or something now. So it'll be interesting to see how this winter goes. But Mitchell, I know you've talked a lot about various Taika movies with me. So what was it about this one that you thought just stood out to you?
Oh gosh. Okay. So let me paint the picture of my relationship with this movie. I actually went into it pretty blind. I went to a preview screen. They do these preview screenings, test screenings in LA pretty frequently. And I got an email for it in, I want to say April or March. I could look up the actual date, but anyway, several months ago, I got the preview screening email. So we went to this preview screening knowing nothing about it, just knowing it's Taika Waititi. It's about Nazi youth. And it's a comedy, and we were like, I don't know how that's going to work. So we go in. It was pretty much the same, because sometimes they'll change these movies a lot in between cuts and stuff. It was pretty much the same movie. I think that really the only big change was the Sam Rockwell character. What's his name is like Heidelberg or Heisenberg or something like that. I don't remember.
I'm so used to calling him Hail Hitler because of that one scene, but yeah, I don't remember any. I won't. Admittedly, I think I only remember Jojo. That's it. I don't remember.
Klenzendorf.
Okay.
Klenzendorf is his name.
I would not have guessed that correctly.
Yeah, but anyways, so yeah, it was basically the same movie, and I was pretty floored about it. My best friend / a lot of the people I know is Jewish, and so we actually went together, and she found it. We went in kind of being like, in the first like few minutes, we were like, I don't know what the tone's going to be here. I don't know. This is such a difficult thing to really nail. But after kind of getting into like the camp sequence and then kind of going on from there, we were like, okay, he knows what he's doing here. This actually kicks ass. This is awesome. And it ended up being like one of my favorite movies of the year. It was really the only movie I was excited about that I saw in like the first half of this year because it was pretty bad out there. So yeah, we went to the test screening in May, and that was great. And I've kind of just loved it ever since. I was really excited to see what kind of reception it would get. I was actually really excited to see how they would market it, because it is in essence kind of unmarketable in a way, because it's literally
you can't put
like
swastikas everywhere.
Yeah, in terms of like pitches for a movie for the American public to go see and maybe even have an awards consideration, like Nazi youth comedy is where the director is playing Hitler is about the most dangerous thing you could get, I would say. But yeah, so I was really, and I'm kind of, we can get more into this later, but I'm kind of like, I feel like they did the best that they could in the marketing it, because the marketing for it was really based on, this is an anti-hate satire was the thing they slapped on every poster, trailer, piece of marketing for it, to really tell people, look, this is about Nazis, but it's a comedy. It's making fun of them. They are bad. Should be obvious. Like the kind of world we live in, it's like very like apparent that they are evil idiots. But yeah, I've seen it 3 times now. I've seen the second time. I can talk more about this later, but the second, I work at the Writers Guild of America, and they have screenings with the writers and directors of these movies fairly frequently. So I actually went to a screening with a Q&A with him that I can talk about now or later, because it helped me put the whole movie into perspective, really.
Yeah, well, real quick, Jonathan, did you go see Jojo Rabbit because of Taika's involvement in it, or was it something that you probably would have seen no matter who was directing it? Because for me personally, I don't know anything beyond his work on Thor Ragnarok. I haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows or any of his other stuff, and this kind of just made me want to go watch his other movies. So for you...
I can't believe you haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows. I honestly,
I know.
I hold What We Do in the Shadows to be probably one of my top 10 films. At least, and if we're talking comedy, probably top 5.
It's up there.
I think it's really
so
good. And my old roommate years and years and years ago showed it to me. And I think it's been like basically a cult classic ever since. I don't even know what type of release it had when it was out in theaters. I saw it, by renting it and then buying it. But I actually heard that Taika was going to be, I read it probably on like Comic Book Movie or Superhero Hype or one of those blogs, that was his next project, that he was writing a like Hitler Nazi satire. And, personally, like I was raised Jewish, but I do not consider myself very religious. We were, I think the correct term is like Reform Judaism. That's the type of synagogue we went to. I was bar mitzvahed. My grandparents, however, they are the one remaining grandparent, both of them at the time, Holocaust survivors. So I've been, to the Holocaust Museum, and it was kind of ingrained in me early on, like what it was, what my grandparents went through. However, at the same time, in the recent years, I feel like the only one that really comes to mind I guess I could name a few Nazi satires that like make it kind of fun and enjoyable and not too
Producers
serious.
is the big one.
Oh, I didn't. You know what? I've actually never seen The Producers.
Oh, wow.
I know this is. I guess you and I are one for one now, Deanna. 'Cause, I have not seen The Producers. That is on my list. But no, I was thinking the first one that came to mind was the Tarantino one. Inglourious Bastards. You know, I thought that was kind of funny, although it was still very much rooted in seriousness. But when I heard what they were going for with this, I didn't really have a problem with it because, like I said, I love What We Do in the Shadows. I thought Thor Ragnarok was really great, and when I saw the like cast that was behind it, I had a feeling that it was at least something to check out. But you know, with that in mind, like I said, I was raised Jewish, even though I do not consider myself very religious, if at all, at this point. But I thought it was really well done. I thought his type of humor is just very silly. He's silly humor, and that it was just, you know, once you get past the fact that, like, first off, they're all, you know, speaking English. And the funny thing for that, I should mention this, is like the first few episodes I watched of Chernobyl, the thing that I couldn't get past is that they were all speaking English. And then for some reason in this movie, I didn't even care. Like, it wasn't even a big
not
deal.
Only are they speaking English, but they're speaking like very modern English.
Yeah, very modern English. Exactly. And even like their accents were just like probably a little over the top. But
very cartoony.
Yeah, very cartoony, you know, just given the actors that were in the film. But overall, yeah, I thought I was very excited when I heard that he was doing it, and I saw the first photo they released of, like, it was just like a promo photo, and it was just him. It was him, the mother, Scarlett Johansson, and the kid, Jojo, sitting at a dinner table. And it was just such a ridiculous photo. And I remember seeing this and be like, oh God, I have to see this when it comes out. So I was very excited. I guess, like, the long-winded answer to your question is yes, I was super excited. I've actually not seen his other film. I think it's like something, The Wilder People or something.
Hunt for the Wilder.
I have not seen that one. I need to check that out, but I love excellent. Yeah, I absolutely need to check that out. But What We Do in the Shadows, excellent. You absolutely must. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen this, there's a reason people are talking about it. And the TV show is also very good. And the TV show is not a remake. It is set in the same universe. It takes like an episode or two to get its footing, but it's really solid. And it's got a second season going. So yeah, I absolutely was excited. I knew, like I said, I consider myself a moderate Taika Waititi fan as far as like knowing everything he's done. I've seen 2 of his films before this, and was very excited. And I don't think it did not disappoint.
For me, this is one of those things that makes me want to go back and just run through his work, because as a director, he actually doesn't have too many things out right now. He has a couple things coming up with the next Thor movie, and he has another project that looks like it's slated for 2020. So obviously you guys have given me homework to go see What We Do in the Shadows. So I will be doing that at some point. And, you know, for me, I just saw that he was involved. I saw the cast and I was like, all right, I have to go see this. And I was a little worried that I was going to have to drive pretty far to go see it, but thankfully I didn't have to. And it eventually came to the area, because Colorado Springs is at least like the second biggest city, I would say, in Colorado. So, you know, the Springs will get movies slightly later than Denver, probably. But Mitchell, I know you said you went to the Q&A and it kind of helped bring some more things to light for you. Why don't you go ahead and walk us through what some of those things were? Because, you know, I definitely won't be going to any Q&As anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just like going to live through you, Mitchell.
So okay, well,
share away.
Wow, thanks. Yeah, I've seen all of his movies, I think. I've seen Ragnarok, What We Do in the Shadows, Wilder People, this. He has another movie called Boy, and another movie called Eagle versus Shark. Yeah, that's, I think, all of them. And they're all uniformly varying levels of good, very funny, sweet. They can really cut to them. They have very pure emotional centers that are very sweet, usually. So yeah, we went to this Q&A with him, and he is truly so funny. But the thing he really got at with this movie is he said he wanted to make a. There are like movies. There are so many war movies out there, and there aren't really any that deal with children and war, because that's kind of like a taboo thing to put children in war. But it is something that happens, and it's something that has always happened, really, because there are always children and there are always wars. So he said he wanted to make sort of a war movie that explains it from a child's perspective. And that's why a lot of the emotions in it and a lot of the stuff in it is very like childlike and fantastical. And the humor is very silly, is because it is trying to come at it from that angle to show these people as a child's approximation of what Nazism is, or because for Jojo, it's really just like a cool club with all these cool characters and all these like neat uniforms, and you get to go to camp with all the other boys, and there's this guy that's really cool. He's your best friend, and he wants your people to win the war, and like that's great. And that's really the level that it's like operating on. That's why so much of it does kind of play that way. I know a lot of criticism that I've seen of this movie has really been in the scope of, this isn't mean enough to Nazis, or this satire really pulls its teeth. And I think that's because it's really a movie that definitely starts very satirical, especially when they're at the camp and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But it sort of is more a coming of age story, I think, for Jojo, and sort of coming out of the Nazi propaganda and the Nazism, and sort of emerging as like a fully formed person with his own ideas and coming out of this thing. So I think that's really what a lot of people have had problems with here. But yeah, that was the biggest thing that he said. He also trying to think of other stuff he said, but that was the biggest one. I think another one was, oh, this is really funny. So Q&As are really bad usually. Like people
they're
ask
usually
stupid
awful.
questions. Yeah, especially like this one was even one for the guild. So everyone there was technically like an industry member, and
they should know what they're doing.
They should. And it's so funny. When they opened it up for questions, he goes, okay, I don't want anyone coming up to the mic with things like, this is more of a opinion and a question, or thank you so much for what you do. I'm a huge fan. I just want to say that. Thank you so much. And then the room was like dead. Like no one wanted to go for questions with him. It was so good.
It's like when Seinfeld asks the crowd at the end of his sets to ask him questions, and then he makes fun of them. It's like, it's something he does. Much. But I've seen, I went to one for John C. Reilly for his like Sister Brothers film. They had SF Film Fest, so they do a bunch of that stuff, and it was amazing. But like the Q&A was awful moderator, awful questions. And then like a week later, we went to one for Booksmart where the moderator was excellent. The questions from the audience were excellent. And you had the whole cast and like director there. So that can be pulling teeth. But like one of the things you mentioned about like the youth and like the I guess innocence of war. You're right. Yeah. Like I can't. I'm trying to think of like, I know that there's at least one or two in the back of my mind, war movies, with kids.
There's
but like
Boy in the Striped Pajamas is like one, but that one's very somber. I think usually they're like about, oh, this kid is suffering, or this is so painful. And this movie, it is kind of doing the thing of like, oh, there are good guys on both sides, but it's not even that he's a good guy, it's that he's a child, It's right. A child can't be evil. It's just he thinks this club is cool,
Yeah, everything with him, and I just want to say, like, everything with him and his friend at the camp, like, was just gold. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That their relationship and the way they talked about everything, and that they were just like so caught up in the thrill of it all that they don't so really cute. See any of like it's hard to be upset when you're like seeing the film through their eyes and knowing what you know as an adult, but seeing like everything just kind of meet at the center. But yeah, it's absolutely like one of the things I loved about this film was the innocence of them and seeing it in their eyes. And like to the people that say, quote unquote, like it wasn't mean enough to Nazis, like it's almost 2020. Like, do we need to like state the obvious. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's just like one of those things where it's like, there has to be like some sort of previous research or or experience with it to like, I guess, fully enjoy this.
For sure, you have to have context, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't exist in nothing exists in a vacuum. Like everyone, like if you expect this movie to explain that Nazis are evil to you, what level are you operating on?
Yeah, exactly. It was a comedy. I mean, it was
That is operating at no level.
I really liked it, and I just overall, you're right. Like, I think what he brought up about the kids was wonderful. And did you get any sort of good questions from the Q&A, or was like everyone just like been kind of put in their place?
I'm going to tag what you just said a second ago about the kids, because I guess it's both of their first times acting on film, which I think is pretty unreal. The not to date this, but the Golden Globes came out today, and although the Golden Globes are shitty and bad and stupid, but they did nominate the lead, Roman Griffin Davies, I think is his name, for
Jojo. Yeah,
Jojo as Best Actor for comedy, which is pretty wild to think about. And I think he is truly doing so much in this movie because he's literally 10 years old. It's his first time acting on film, and he is having to communicate so many different emotions over the course of it. Like, because his scenes with any given, he's literally in every scene in the movie, and I think except for like one or two maybe, but because he has a different dynamic with every character in the movie. He has a different dynamic with his mother than he has with his best friend, than he has with Hitler, then he has a way different dynamic with Thomas and Mackenzie's character, Elsa.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like, go ahead. Sorry.
It's pretty wild. I also wanted to say that just Yorkie, his friend, every line in this movie that he has absolutely
crushed it,
destroys.
He crushed it.
So he's so funny. I cannot believe his timing and his delivery is just unreal good.
Yeah.
Oh, like, yeah. They were one of my favorite combos. The two of them, they just really work well together. And like, you had mentioned, like, he has all of the scenes, and while you have all of these other great actors, it's such a weird thing to imagine that they're going to be good at these lines, but like, and they can only prop up other actors so much.
Right.
But he does such a wonderful job acting with all of these other people. And absolutely, I hope we see him in more stuff. I imagine we will.
Yeah.
But I agree. Like, he had Scarlett Johansson, who easily could have just been propping him up with her amazingness.
Yeah. Yeah, she's good in this, even though I have no idea what her accent is really.
Oh, fair. I didn't even. This was actually, it's funny. I don't get me wrong. Like, I really like Scarlett Johansson, but this has to be one of my favorite roles by her. Like, I've never really given it a lot of thought because I'm just used to her. For the most of the stuff I've seen her in has been Marvel films. I've seen other stuff, smaller projects and bigger projects that she's done, no question. But like, I'm mostly familiar with her from Marvel, and like this, I just remember leaving this and being like, oh man, her comedy is great. Like, she's got good comedy chops. And it was like very similar to me when they did the same thing with Hemsworth. Who knew? Like, great comedy chops, but they have them, and just give them more of those types of roles. And she was so sweet and endearing. But you're right, like he did so much of the work in this film, and that a lot. It's great that he was nominated.
Yeah, Mitchell, you brought up the emotions, and I definitely want to talk about like the emotional spectrum of this movie, because every time Jojo is going through something, the audience is going through it with them, all the highs and all the lows. You have hilarious moments in this, and then you have utterly heartbreaking moments in this, and Taika manages to find a way to balance all of that out. So even though these heartbreaking things happen, you find a way to walk out of the theater and be like, wow, that was such a good time. And then you just have to sit there with your own emotions, and you're like, so many things happened. I felt so many things. For me, it kind of reminded me of watching Coco, even though Coco doesn't have nearly as hilarious of moments. But just because of everything that went on in Coco, I was like, whew, that was an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I want to for a second just I love the motif of the tying the shoes and looking at the feet and seeing the mom's feet dancing all of those times, and then because you see the people hanging and you see their shoes like early on in the film, and the fact that I don't think anyone could see, oh, the mom gets caught and he discovers her.
I didn't see that
and sees her
coming
shoes.
at all. I didn't
It
see
makes
that. And it makes so much sense, and I couldn't believe
it's perfect.
I
and
was
it's
so caught up in
obvious.
the moment. It was a gut punch, and I loved
Yeah.
it. It was like, because that's where my head was at, where I was like, oh, this is such a happy film, you know, and then you forget, and it's like back to reality. This is a film about war, you know. It's like that, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to that totally took me by surprise, and I shouldn't have.
It's so good. It's such a good, because it's like, so when you see it, you're like, oh my God, it's so obvious. How did I not see this coming? But the film just, it sets it up in a way that's so like deft and so good. And like, that's, I think he talked about how, or maybe it wasn't him, but it was somebody recently. I've been listening to a lot of awardsy podcasts and discussions and interviews and what have you, but just people, it might have been him, it might have been someone else, said that when people are laughing, they are more like emotionally open and vulnerable. So when you have something that makes somebody laugh like hysterically, you can also have things that cut to the deeper emotions and it can work together. That's, I think, my favorite like genre of things is like, I call them sad coms. People call them dramedies. I would say like stuff like this, stuff like Marriage Story is another movie that's out right now.
That's on my list. No spoilers.
Same.
I've heard that's what I keep hearing, is that it's like excellently acted, gut-wrenchingly sad.
Yes, Scarlett is in that. She is incredible in that. But it is the entire movie. You're really on a roller coaster of either laughing hysterically or having intense dread and sadness at how these people's lives are playing out. And this is kind of similar. Like he is able, like this is a lot more lighthearted, surprisingly, than a movie about divorce. But that you are able to tap into when you have your audience, and when you're doing such a good job of making them laugh and putting them in this certain mindset, you can like Trojan horse it with these deeper feelings and emotions. And I think this movie is just a great example of just really effective writing and direction that is able to pull such a difficult, but like such a just, that twist is so good. And
I feel like, you know, we haven't even mentioned it. And we've spoke of the woman who plays the girl in the wall.
Elsa.
She is wonderful. She was.
Oh, she's incredible.
They were. I mean, like we said, you know, he definitely is in all of the scenes, but the scenes that they shared were so wonderful as well. You know, just the fact that, you know, they're already taking us for a huge ride this whole movie when they're like talking about all of the things about Jews and like these ridiculous things that they tell people. And it's like, you're already laughing, but they're like saying it so seriously. And then I don't think he really gets it until she's like taking him for a ride all those times at the beginning, you know? And I think that's what was so playful and funny about the whole thing. It was just like, oh my God, do you not see how ridiculous this is? The whole book and everything, that whole setup was just wonderful.
Yoo-hoo, Jude.
Yeah, yoo-hoo,
I
Jude.
do have something on her. Somebody asked about her and what like the process was for what they how they made these actors like prepare, and he said that he had her watch exclusively like teen comedies about bullying, so like Mean Girls and Clueless and stuff of that nature, because he wanted her to be a bully. He thought that would be a lot more interesting than like a sad, somber person. And I think that kind of empowers her character, because she does come at Jojo so aggressively from the first time that they meet. Like it's played like a horror movie almost. You see her hand like creeping out of the wall, and it's kind of played for comedy, but it like to him, he's truly horrified at what he perceives to be a monster. And then she just kind of takes that and runs with it for their first chunk of interactions. And for a large part of the movie is her trying to be, she's on the offensive with him. because she's trying to prove that, no, you're a stupid idiot who's been tricked by these monsters who like have this essentially boys club that appeals to little boys, and that's what is happening here.
Yeah, I love
And
the way
I think
she
that
so succinctly like put it together, where she's just like, "You're not a monster. You are a little boy who likes to like play dress up, basically, or something."
Yeah.
She said something like that
Yes.
when he was starting to
Yeah.
put it together near the end of the film or in the middle or
Mhm.
something like that. And that was delightful.
I also love that they take time to foster that connection between the two of them. It's slowly happening, and Jojo is kind of figuring things out on the fly because his father's gone. His mother dies while she's still hiding in the walls, and he's just left here with Elsa, and he's a 10-year-old who's all alone, pretty much, aside from this weird girl hiding in the wall to him.
Yeah.
And so the
They've
way
both
they
lost
work
everything.
through that, it was just so impressive with every scene they had together. Like you said, Jonathan, it was just so great to see those personalities of the characters clash and then come together in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. They are. She was very good. She was one of the more like. I mean, in already like like I said, everyone did a great job with their roles, but I think that the two boys and her they were real standouts, and I really like that the buildup of their characters, especially with him writing all the fake letters from the boyfriend, not realizing the whole time that he was actually dead. And like, and she was letting him go on with it because, she could have been like, this is a waste of my time. Why am I doing this? But she just enjoyed his company and enjoyed, that she let the ruse continue for so long. It's just like this long con of her pranking this kid. It was very sweet. It's just like one of those, another thing in the film to add, to already something being seen through a kid's eyes is like all of the humor is really lighthearted and not mean. And I think that's actually, saying it out loud, I think that's one of the things that I don't think this film would be funny if you were meaner to the Nazis and meaner to Hitler. Like it wouldn't have the same type of tone. It just a lot of that would have been lost. And so I thought that they nailed it with that.
Yeah, I think that's a hard thing for people to wrap their heads around, just because typically when you see like satire of this nature, it is trying to be very like aggressive and biting and really trying to take these people down because they are so horrible, obviously. But that's another thing about it being a war movie from a children's perspective, is that it has to operate on that level. It has to be very like silly and goofy and play to a certain audience rather than be like if the Nazis were like throwing kids into, or if it showed like the Nazis like cremating Jews and like made a joke out of that or something to that nature, like it wouldn't really work here because it is trying to operate on that level.
They do a very nice job of taking a very serious message that's in this movie and coming at it from a comedic, childish standpoint. Jojo doesn't know any better, so he doesn't understand that Jewish people are just people. And it takes its time with teaching that to him. And I think that message throughout the movie of just connecting with people who are different than you and how they're still people is something that I don't want to say the movie necessarily sneaks in, because that's definitely one of the main points of this movie during this wartime, but it's just so cleverly done. You can't help but love it. I don't know if I've heard anyone say they didn't like this movie.
I saw it a second time with my folks. I don't think they loved it.
Okay.
I also don't think, but I don't think that, like, to be fair, I showed them What We Do in the Shadows, which once again, I consider one of my favorite films, and they just didn't care for it. So I think that it's just like, they're not into his humor, and some people, but I would have to say people around our age, late 20s, early 30s, most of the people I've talked to that have seen it really enjoyed it.
Our friend groups definitely jumped on it for sure.
It's funny. My friend group really likes it. Like everyone I know, like in person, pretty much that has seen it, I think has really liked it. But a lot
Yeah.
of the people I follow on Letterboxd and a lot of the critics I follow actually didn't love it, which is
That
very
was
interesting
crazy to me that it had
Yeah.
something like a high 60, something like that.
I think it's
when
a
I
tough
s-
sell.
and
It's
it's
hard
like
for
and
people
I
to.
was and you're right. Like I was talking to a friend of mine and I was trying to convince him to see it. And he was just like, I just don't think it like, and God, I hate repeating this because like, he's a very smart person. And he was
Right.
just like, given the nature of like what it's about, I just don't see how I could see that being funny. And I'm just like,
It's
you have to give it a shot.
people are
They're
it's tough.
apprehensive.
Yeah, it's people have, especially nowadays, there's a lot of like defensiveness and it's oftentimes warranted. And, sometimes people are, this movie is not something, it's interesting that they are pushing it for awards to me. Cause when I saw it, I was like, well, this is great, but I have trouble believing that what a greater audience will feel about this movie. Like, I feel like it is doing things that are so dicey that people a lot are just going to not be able to get on that or not going to be able to vibe on the level of it just because it is threading such a needle, it's like it's hitting such a specific tone that it shouldn't be able to do because it is an incredibly narrow thing to hit. But I think for me it works. I think for a lot of people it works, not for everyone. And it probably won't win a ton of stuff, but it's nice for it to be getting some recognition. And I think if you're a fan of Taika's work and any of his other movies or just his general style, that
it's a win.
Absolutely.
It's a win.
Yeah,
it's like,
for sure.
Absolutely. It's another film that like when I tell people to see What We Do in the Shadows, if they say, oh, I've seen that, I'll be like, have you seen Jojo Rabbit? Or if Jojo Rabbit, if they love Jojo Rabbit, I'm just be like, well, then you have to see What We Do in the Shadows. And I should mention, like, I don't know, maybe it was just after Twilight, but I hated vampires for the longest time. I felt like they were so overdone at that point, because everyone was doing it because that was the hot thing.
Yeah.
And so I remember when my friend started elevator pitching it to me, and I was just like, oh my God, did you just say vampires? And he's like, no. Trust me. He's like, it's shot like, like a mockumentary, you're going to really enjoy this. And he
so
like, that is his style. He is very much a silly person, even though the movie, I think it's a rated R film and there might be some cursing or something. In general, he's shown, with Thor, he can make stuff that's funny and doesn't have to be super adult. Even this film, I think it was probably rated R, but
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause there might've been some cursing or something, but there wasn't exactly like a lot of violence. I think it was just cursing.
He does tell Hitler to fuck off. And he kicks him through the window.
Yes, through the window.
It might be PG-13 actually, because I think that might
you're
be
allowed one.
Their one,
just one.
Yeah, you're allowed.
I think somebody's
like
Letterboxd review was like greatest use of a single fuck in a movie, in a PG-13 movie, maybe.
Absolutely.
Ever.
I would say that was definitely one of my favorite moments of the film.
There's so many good ones.
Yeah. What were some of yours?
When Yorkie walks up to him at the end and he's like, yeah, I somehow can't die. It's so good.
So many good Yorkie moments.
What was he saying about his shirt where he's like, I think it's paper?
Oh yeah, he's wearing the uniform that's made out of cardboard because they've run out of money.
Yes, that's what it was. All of that stuff. Like,
oh my gosh.
Everything where it's like, oh yes, we're totally winning the war, and like the mom was the only one who was like kind of seeing what's going on.
Fucking part where they're it's like a throwaway joke, but it's so funny where he's like, I said you should get dogs, not actual
German shepherds.
Yes. So stupid.
It's such a stupid joke, but it worked.
So
it
good.
Worked. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's hilarious. I think that might have been the only joke that I heard my dad laugh at in the entire film when we were sitting. And like, I know because we end up seeing it back where they live, and there aren't a lot of people that go to those theaters. It's a small town. And so I was sitting, right next to him, and I'm pretty sure that's the only audible ha I got out of him the entire film. And he didn't like, neither of them hated it. Neither of them were like, oh, it's awful. And why did you
Just
drag
wasn't.
me to that? They, that's what my mom said after she saw Logan.
That is quite the movie to take your mom to.
She doesn't like violence.
These are tough sells a little bit.
My folks, I'm not really doing a great job selling my folks right now. I love them to death. But yeah, no, I that was definitely like, yeah. Deanna, what was like some of your favorite moments from the film?
I think pretty much every time Yorkie showed up, there was just something funny going on. But one that I really found hilarious was when he just drops like the bazooka or something and it blows up the building and he's like, uh-oh, oops, kind of thing. And it's just so perfectly timed, either
Kids
with
in
his
war.
one-liners or his reactions to things. And I mean, you had a lot of great Jojo moments too. And I really like that moment between Jojo and his mom where she, puts her hand in the fireplace and smears the beard on her and acts like his dad. It was just such a nice moment from Scarlett Johansson.
That was one of my favorites.
It was so good. And it's so hard to pick favorite moments too, because everything was so good in this. Like,
yeah, Scarlett, since you brought her up, that scene where they're going up the stairs and she ties his shoelaces together. And
yes.
she's like, just walk, she's just, better hurry up. You're slowing me down. Like, all of that is everything. That anytime they share a scene together, or him and Yorkie share a scene together, it's like you were 100% focused on what was going on and what the dialogue was. And Yorkie's delivery is just so innocent. Everything they do is so innocent. I was just thinking about this. I was just like, man, if they cast either of those two kids in Stranger Things, I'd be the happiest person in the world. But they're too, I think they're too young compared to the other kids now. But like those kids, I have a feeling the two of them are going to hopefully have many awesome movies, in the future. But they were
I also want to credit this movie a ton for being one of the only, I don't want to like dunk on this actress, but this is one of the funniest Rebel Wilson performances I've seen. And she is very good in this.
Yeah.
I find that she's a rarity. She's good in small doses. Like, I love her role in Bridesmaids. Her role, that was the first thing I ever saw her in. And she had so many funny lines. And I think she is funny in general. I do think in general that she is she is funny. But like you, it sounds like you're not loving like most of the movies you've seen her in. And I think
I think she has the ability to do lots of different things, but the thing that she has been doing for a while now is not my jam. But she's in this and she's great. She hands a bunch of kids guns. Oh my god! But
everything about that.
I want to talk about this because I feel like we talked about the scene where he discovers his mother.
Yeah.
But there's also that big sequence towards the end of the film, the one that you just touched on, where like the war has come to their town and everyone, like the kids are all running, all these children are running with rifles, and Rebel Wilson's handing out guns, and you see like old ladies like being taught to use RPG launchers just in the background, and you see just all these like poor townsfolk having to participate in this war, and
go along
I guess
with it.
or they're getting wrecked, Teka said that when he was doing research for this, that a lot of the images in that were actually things that he photographs that he saw from World War II, stuff of that nature. Like he said, the image of the group of old ladies with rifles was an actual picture that he saw. And he said that as he studied more, like he saw all of the ridiculous stuff. He's like, some of the more ridiculous stuff in this movie is true. Like some of the stuff I saw, like if I had put it in the movie, would have been too ridiculous, He had
to draw the line somewhere.
Somewhere. But that scene plays as like this major moment where Jojo finally realizes like the consequences and like the true meaning of these things that he has built his like worldview around. Like what the Nazis are doing. They're handing children guns and sending them off into enemy fire. They're forcing everyone in this town to participate in this war that they know they're going to lose. And you see like the explosions happening, you see people flying through the air. It's a very not climactic, but just a big turning point for him. And you can tell that it's truly this moment where he realizes what it all means. And I think it's played really well. I think it's effectively communicated. The only character that I feel like the movie kind of leaves on the table a little bit is the Sam Rockwell character.
Okay.
Because I think in the first cut that I saw, there wasn't that scene after that war scene where him and Jojo get captured. And then
which I felt was very important. I thought that was such a great scene.
Yeah, that is a really good scene where he kind of basically sacrifices himself so that Jojo can have that moment of escape and sort of be free. But yeah, I think his character is like coded as being queer with, what's the other guy's name?
The dude from Game of Thrones. Reek? I don't really.
Alfie Allen.
Alfie Allen.
I did catch on to that too.
Yeah, I think they're coded as being like secret gay Nazis who are trapped in it. And I think that's I think the idea is that he since he was trapped in this life, and it was him sort of sacrificing himself to help Jojo, because he also had been, he was a secret person that hated Nazis. But yeah, I feel like that's not entirely super clear. I've really only gotten to it after watching it a few times. But yeah, I think that war scene is great.
I mean, they really put it, they I felt like they tried their best to really drive it home with that moment that they share at the end, where they're just
true.
They stare each other in the face, and they're very wrong. Like, I thought it was kind of cute, but at the same time, I didn't think it was necessary to end the story. But I did think it was. I guess now thinking about it, I guess that kind of explains the magnificent outfit that he has drawn up and done. I guess that that was kind of another. I didn't have a problem. Personally, I didn't have a problem with it, but I could see, I could see why it'd be a little confusing, or some people may not dig it. But I thought that they were fun.
Yeah, I think it's kind of okay, I'm gay. I had to join the military because it's what you do, and I'm just going to express myself in this way, because it is really,
you're right.
It is really the only way that I have to express this part of myself. And it's the only thing I can do here, really, because I'm kind of fucked, Yeah.
Also, all the drawings of his suits.
Yeah, exactly.
All the feathery additions to his uniform and everything like that. That's when I think it started hitting for me that I was like, okay, this is who this character is supposed to be. And I know there's so much to unpack with this movie, but I do want to make sure we talk about the score, because it's one of those things where, for me, a score is a lot better when I don't actively notice it.
Yeah.
And it just sort of makes the movie a better all-around experience. And I think that's what this movie did really well too. And I was reading this article in Variety about various scores from movies this year, and the last one is on Jojo Rabbit, and the composer mentioned approaching this from a child's perspective. So the score is a little more playful at times, but then, during the war scenes, you have so many sound effects and just this overwhelming sense of emotion that the score just kind of flows right through with every emotion that you're feeling.
I just looked it up. Did you know who did the score for this? It's Michael. I always forget how to pronounce his name. Giacchino, maybe. Yeah, he does everything. He's amazing. I didn't realize, and it's funny. I didn't even, when you started talking about the soundtrack, I'm trying to think about it, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice it, but I know that what I heard I liked. I was thinking about the soundtrack. The soundtrack. Was
all the German pop songs.
All the German pop songs. I love that. But you're right. The score now, and I'm actually looking up. It's funny. The only songs on Apple Music from the soundtrack that are available are the score songs. So the stuff that, Rosie's Nocturne, A Butterfly's Wings, JoJo's theme, those are the only one. The original score songs are the only ones on the soundtrack that I can get without buying the soundtrack. Damn you, Apple! But I'll definitely be listening to this later. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I was going to say that those German Beatles songs, they did record a handful of their songs in German right when they came out in the 60s, which was a thing. So those are real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same thing with my folks. I thought that they were just re-recorded either for the movie or just been done as covers a few years ago. And my folks were like, "No, I'm pretty sure that's actually them."
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, they just had a lot of nice touches with the score and soundtrack that you don't necessarily notice in the moment, but it's more when you sit down and look back on the movie like we've been doing here. But do you guys have any final thoughts on this before we wrap up?
I've pretty much gotten it all out.
How about you, Mitchell?
Yeah, I was going to say it's just one of my favorite movies of the year. It's definitely one of those things that I think is very unique. I don't think there are a lot of movies like this. I think every type of movie has something. And yeah, I hope it does well. I don't think it's probably going to win any awards, but I really hope that people enjoy this and enjoy talking about it and have different perspectives on it, and it gets people talking and feeling something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like it was a very nice moment in I think a year of some pretty good films. And you're right, probably won't win a lot of awards, unfortunately, but it definitely has gotten these new actors on our radars. It was a pleasant film and definitely will add to his arsenal of films that I find are funny. I'm definitely going to go check out his other ones now. I mean, I was already considering myself a fan, so we know Deanna's going to finally go watch
Hunt for the Wilder People. Kind of has a similar vibe, I guess, because it is also about a kid, as is Boy. Very different circumstances, obviously, but similar ideas and similar themes and tone and sense of humor. And I think that you'll definitely love them. Hunt for the Wilder People is wonderful. So,
all right, cool. I will get back to you on that, but I'm sure I will love it as well.
Right on.
We both have homework now, Jonathan.
We have homework
it's not
to
just
do.
me.
Yeah.
I always have homework to do, it seems
everyone.
like.
Okay. It's okay. It's totally fine. It's homework I want to complete and participate in. So.
It's the fun kind of homework.
All right.
Yeah, it's fun homework. Exactly.
Great.
I know I text both of you quite a bit about what movies to go see because you guys now get to see things sooner than I do. And with this one, you guys definitely convinced me to go see it as soon as I could, pretty much when it hit theaters here. And I'm really glad that I got the theater experience with this because I think it's going to be something that a lot of people probably stream. I think this is a very rewatchable movie because it's not too heavy to where you're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted after watching that, which is how I felt with something like Joker because that was exhausting.
Yeah.
So you have this fun movie that has this serious message. And, I don't often give movies 5 stars. I maybe do it like once or twice a year. And Mitchell and Jonathan, I know you're both on Letterboxd as well. So I'm always like stalking people's profiles. I told Mitchell the other day, I was like, I've missed a lot of movies, so I'm going to go stalk your Letterboxd. I'll be right back.
Yeah. And I'm actually pretty good about staying current on it now. So doing my best.
Yeah. So I will link to all of our Letterboxd profiles for people in the show notes and any articles and videos for this that we want you guys to see. But Mitchell and Jonathan, thank you so much for making time to talk about this one. It was definitely one I wanted to get covered because it feels like such an important movie, even though it's a comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having us.
For sure. Anytime. I think that comedies should be important. I think it's better when you can laugh at something and have a good time, but also feel like when you can experience like a spectrum of emotions rather than just being sad or just being thrilled. I think that's always better when a film can bend you in those ways.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, and you're right. Absolutely. This film did such a wonderful job of that with everything from the women that supported this cast, with Scarlett and Elsa.
Elsa is the character
Thomason.
name.
The character, yes. Yeah,
Thomason McKenzie.
Thomason McKenzie, excuse me, Thomason McKenzie.
Scarlett and Roman and Thomason and Taika.
Yeah, there's just so many amazing people that I'm having trouble with the names. But yeah, they everyone did such a wonderful job. But yeah, the gut punches that you got from this very overly comedic film, and then you get the gut punches you do get, they hit so well. And it was just a wonderfully balanced film as a result. And I will definitely be rewatching it or buying it when it hits iTunes, I suppose.
Nice.
Well, that wraps up our discussion today. Quickly, before we go, I want to let you all know that you can support the podcast on Patreon. There will be a link in the show notes for that. If you don't want to give up some of your money for this, you can leave a rating and review. That's a nice free way to support the podcast. You can also follow us at GeekdomPod on Twitter and Welcome to Geekdom on Instagram and Facebook. Guys, thank you again.
Thank you.
Of course.
And to our listeners, as always, thank you all for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.